Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. So today I have a bit of a different video for you. Just before we get into that, if this is your first time here, hi, my name is Robert. I'm a professional makeup artist here on YouTube and also in real life, and it's my goal to help you become a pro yourself or just someone who's really good at makeup. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, then do please consider subscribing. Let me say something, right? If this is your first time here, as I said, I'm a professional makeup artist, so I've been doing makeup way before I've been doing YouTube. I've been doing YouTube now for about full-time for about 3 years. I'm 33 and I've been doing makeup since I was 18 professionally. And one thing that you notice after even just doing 5 years, you know what, even a year of doing makeup is how trends circle back round. And a lot of you will know this anyway, in a lot of professions, a lot of professions, and just people who follow fashion and who follow makeup. A lot of trends come back around over time, and we see trends come around a lot quicker now because of social media. So I wanted to do a video today of trends that I'm seeing coming back that maybe we should be a little bit afraid of because you know what? We have been there already and mistakes were made and permanent damage was done. So let's get into that, and let's start with the first one, just so you all understand where I'm going with this and exactly what I mean. And this is a prediction I made on Twitter. Is it? I can't remember. I did I see in the future, and I did this Twitter thread. I predicted fragrance was going to be this year's skincare. You know, when skincare had a huge thingy and everyone went crazy for it, I was like, fragrance is going to be about skinny brows. Skinny brows are making a comeback. So we were there. We've been there. We've done this. And let me tell you something. I quite like the way they look. Because when these trends are coming back round, of course they're done a little bit differently. And these thinner brows are being done with a lot more detail than to how we were used to back in the 90s, early 2000s, where it was almost like one hair thick of brows. These have a little bit more definition and a little bit more precision, and you can see strokes to it. Now, the danger of thin or skinny brows, and you know, why we should be slightly afraid of this trend is because if we're going to jump on this trend, and of course you don't have to jump on any trend, and especially brow trends that change every year now or every 6 months. If we're going to jump on this trend, I would recommend taking this on in a way where you almost manipulate your makeup to making it look like you have skinny brows if you don't already. If you have very thick brows, I wouldn't go plucking them or shaving them or anything like that. Ask anyone, ask your mum, ask your auntie, ask yourself, ask a big sister, whoever. If you're under a certain age, don't over pluck your brows, because let me tell you something, they are not coming back. Your brows will never be the same again if you are gonna get rid of them. And especially nowadays, you know, it wasn't just over plucking, we can wax them, we can thread them. People might go as far as to, can you laser brows? No, I guess not, it's too close to the eyes, right? And also the upkeep of a skinny brow, it's almost like, I remember a lot back in the 90s, there'll be a lot of people with almost like a 5 o'clock shadow to their brows because brows are annoying to keep up, right? We don't want to thread them all the time. We don't want to pluck them all the time. And it's just occasions where you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, yeah, I need to do my brows, but I'm not going to. And it would always have that greeny kind of greeny blue growth coming back, especially if you had darker hairs. One thing that for me, that skinny brows or thinner brows that aren't kind of part of your natural makeup, not makeup as in makeup, but as in your natural features. I find a lot of people with naturally thinner brows, this doesn't really apply to, but for people who over pluck or who make them skinnier, it kind of adds, you can kind of see where they've been taken up further than where the natural growth is. There's almost like this invisible ridge that's slightly visible, so it's not invisible. And it almost looks skeletal. It almost looks like skull-like. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like we're accentuating that roundness or that shape of eye hole where how do you describe this? A thicker brow always looks more youthful, let's say, because if I was to like make my brows super skinny so that like it was exactly with a ridge of where my eye skull is, what's that called? Eye hole. And then, you know, contour my face completely to where, you know, you're verging on theatrical elderly person makeup. Do you know what I mean? Like it's those lines, that accentuation of what we think of when we think of an old person's face. So I would be very, very wary of taking them too thin or making them too thin or too fine. You can make them look smaller or thinner by using like just literally a lighter eyebrow product. You can laminate them, but don't brush them up. You can just brush them outwards, and that way you're going to get a thinner brow also. You can just carve around them. It doesn't have to be rigid. You can use a concealer tone that's exactly your shade, or like a lighter, more liquid product to like a BB cream to kind of carve around them and make them look thinner. I just personally wouldn't go plucking them away. And this leads me on to another thing that's still part of the eyebrows and something I've seen a lot and I actually really, really love, and that is taking off the corner of your brow. So on me, we would just completely take off this corner, and it's something I've done before and actually really, really liked. Again, it's something I would advise against because it means that you have to almost like change your makeup shape, your eye makeup shape, the shapes that you're used to. It might not grow back as nice. And again, brow trends change all the time. It's just something that I wouldn't do. And again, please no one take offense to this if you have permanent makeup, but that's why I don't like permanent tattoos, like an actual tattoo. Microblading, fine. Because that, you know, that looks very natural. But when unfortunately, people I think took advantage of a tattoo trend and gave people full-on tattooed brows, you can never change those brows now. You can never comb them into place. You can, you know, because they are full-on tattooed. And of course, that doesn't apply for people who have had to have tattooed because maybe they lost their brow hairs. Just bear in mind how much trends change. Yeah. That's my old man warning. Also, don't get a credit card when you're 18. Okay, so my next one is glitter. Right, listen. I know some of you are going to be like, oh, well, Robert doesn't like glitter. Of course he doesn't like this trend. However, I can appreciate why people like glitter. I just personally don't like it. But as a makeup artist, I'm not going to be like, no one can ever use it. You know, of course I can. Okay, and one thing I have noticed coming back is glitter in everything. I always have this memory of going to like a disco, you know, back in the day when people have discos and like halls, like community halls, and going with my friend, and her mum was taking us, and just before we walked out the front door, she was like, oh, wait a minute, and sprayed glitter absolutely everywhere, the face, the hair, everything like that. Back then, it was the thing to do, right? Roll on body glitter, all this kind of stuff. And this is a very particular reason why I don't like this, is because of the way glitter looks in photographs and how our phones have come along, how cameras have come along, how film has come along since that time of using glitter. There's something about sporadic pieces of glitter that pick up differently on camera. On the face, it can look like texture skin. On the hair, it can look like dandruff. On the clothes, it can just look like fluff because it has that reflective surface. So as great as glitter looks packed together, tight or close up in very controlled lighting situations, if we dim the lights, a glitter looks really, really nice on camera. However, if somebody just takes a flash picture of you and you have glitter, it's going to look like random bits of texture everywhere. That's why I personally don't like glitter in highlighters, bronzers. It's cool on a lip. Sometimes you get like a little bit of it, looks like a bit of food. In the hair, on black clothing, you know, it's just something about it that doesn't look quite right. Now, here's hoping that brands kind of think about this before they put it out there, their products out there with glitter in. I don't think you can, because how can you just, you know, decide what direction glitter flies in once it's dispersed from a can or on a brush, you know? I think that's something very difficult to control. So glitter isn't something I would recommend if you are conscious about maybe excess texture on the skin. It doesn't add to anything really. It just kind of does, it just kind of adds this extra texture. I do have quite a bit of texture on my cheeks here, so I personally choose not to use glittery products. I don't mind metallic or a bit of a shine. There's a difference between, you know, a shimmer and a glitter, where you just have that occasional like sparkle, but those glitter chunks that fly out everywhere, I would be very wary of if you have certain skin concerns, maybe fine lines you don't like too much. And also you need to bear in mind like the tone of the glitter. Is it silver glitter? Is it gold? If it's silver, is it going to look grey on your skin? Is it going to look grey when it's mixed with a certain product? Glitter is like a... I can see why people are liking it with all this kind of like early 2000s stuff coming back. But at the same time, like let's be cautious of texture and how it looks. This is the modern, a lot has changed since then in terms of how we see things, how, you know, we see pictures online of people, whereas before it was just like people saw you face to face and that was it. And I don't even think a camera quality back then would, well, an everyday camera would pick up the texture of glitter or the, you know, individual sparks of reflections of glitter. So next up is blush on the apples of the cheeks. Now, this isn't something that you absolutely shouldn't do, because blush on a squarer face on the cheeks looks great. Blush on the apples of the cheeks on a longer face, great. On a rounder face, it's something you should do with caution. You can offset it with something deeper like a contour. However, I've seen this trend a lot of every single person, no matter what their face shape is, no matter what kind of thing they're trying to achieve. And of course they can do this, but again, in theory, so please don't take it personally, it isn't, on the apples of cheeks doesn't look that great on every single person, especially if they're rounder in the face, or perhaps you're trying to give yourself a really sculpted look. If you put the blush here, it's going to kind of offset that sculpt, like I said, with like the rounder face shape. And this kind of comes from this trend that people are doing a lot recently of like a more of an ombre blush, which is a normal thing to do, but of course it has to be a trend where it's a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. That's what it is. And of course, like you kind of run out of room, so you need to use a darker and your lighter here instead of using like the darker underneath maybe and the lighter like this. People are bringing it right onto the apples of the cheeks. Now, this very much reminds me of like the 40s, 50s, 80s, no, 80s is up here, you know, like way back kind of trend where it's just like put your blush where you look jolly, you know, rather than, you know, sculpted or beneficial to your face shape. However, I do think people are a lot more educated in terms of their own application, own makeup application, that maybe not everyone is going to do this, but we kind of went through it with a blush that kind of went across the whole face here, on the nose, on the cheeks, because it gives that plumped up like rosy effect. But we need to bear in mind when we're going to use that along with what, you know. If you do want to put blusher on your cheeks, however, maybe you're redder on the cheeks, you can go for a blush that's a little bit peachier, because that helps kind of tone down the redness a little bit. If you do want to bring it in a little bit more, but you want more of a sculpt, I would 100% recommend bringing your blush, if you want to bring it in under that apple of a cheek, right under here, because you're still getting that flush of color. So you can do like half on, half off. But yes, just watch that one, try it and see how you feel about that placement. Okay, this is the last one. And this is like a look back on the 90s, this whole thing in general, the glitter, the eyebrows. And this is one, again, that I see brands doing again, and it's the old school kind of textures. And I'm talking about powder foundations, and I know powder foundations have been around for a very long time, but we were making progress in terms of the textures and the applications. And now I see a lot of brands bringing out basic powder foundations that remind me of the 90s, and Mousse foundation. We all remember Dream Matte Mousse, which actually wasn't that bad. I tried it a few months back and it was actually okay. If you prep your skin right, it wasn't too terrible. So there's a few different things with this. Mousse texture foundations tend to get caught almost on drier skin, dehydrated skin, facial hairs. Even if you just have a tiny little bit of hair around the mouth, that mousse texture looks very obvious around there. Maybe you have some hair just down the side here, it gets caught on. That texture really does show up. There's something about mousse where it's like almost like this matte, not quite matte, you can see everything kind of situation. Now, my one concern with these textures, the old powders, and I just used one recently that reminded me of like an old school powder foundation, is that brands are just turning out these products and maybe not investing in as much time into the formulation and how these products actually look. And I mean, they didn't look good back then, so why have we not thought about reformulating them? I saw a Mousse foundation recently and someone sent it to me. Oh, I wish I remember the name. And it was one color and it said suits all medium skin tones. So it suits all medium skin tones. It just gives this almost like cheapness to the product. And it's a bit like mousse textures always seem to settle in lines as well. You know what it reminds me of, right? You know when someone gets a really bad spray tan and they're like a little bit darker like here, or a little bit darker in this crease here. Mousse has this almost like velvet. We brush it this way, it's one color. Brush it that way, it's another color. I would be very wary of mousse textures. I think a lot are going to come out soon. It might be worth testing and seeing what's good. Let's hope again, brands actually maybe see it as much of a needed thing, that they invest a little bit more time into it. Powder foundations as well. If your powder's giving off a lot of powder, to me, that isn't a very modern powder foundation. That gives me very 90s, like this will do Avon kind of vibes. And it's almost just to fill a gap. You know, if everyone's bringing out powder foundations, then we should bring one out. What's the one we can do the quickest? So those kind of textures that are a little bit more old school need a little bit more work, in my opinion, from brands. We can apply them however we want, but we know how to prep our skin a little bit more now. We know how to finish our skin a little bit more now. Whereas back in school, we just kind of woke up, washed our face and whacked on Dream Matte mousse, only to hear and had that divide. It was getting all caught on, you know, our dry skin and all this kind of stuff. So providing that a brand can give us a really nice new formula, a nice new texture, then we should be okay. But do just watch out for these rushed out, hurried through textures. Okay, so those were a few makeup trends I see coming out and creeping out of the woodwork that we should be wary of, slightly scared of, but don't be too scared. Is there anything that you have seen that reminds you of back in the day, how you used to do your makeup, or something you've seen come back where you're like, oh, but why? Let me know in the comments below. Please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.